couple of things that I'm going to talk about today are organization. How do we keep ourselves organized in Final Cut? The first thing to do is to make sure you know where all of your files are going. The Final Cut works with what you call scratch disks, which is basically just folders where Final Cut knows to find everything. If you're working on a computer that a lot of other people tend to work on as well, they may be resetting where the information is being saved to. So you should always, if you aren't working on your own computer, you should always look at where the information is set to go. And the way that you do that is you go up to Final Cut Pro, then you go down to System Settings, and the very first tab is your scratch disks. So it'll tell you where, right here, it'll tell you where to find where to find the folder where everything that you log and capture is going to go to. So if that's not the folder that you're familiar with, I don't know if you guys have your own set of folders that you work with that nobody else ever uses or touches or is supposed to use or touch, then you want to make sure that it's always set to your specific folder. And so you just do that by hitting Set and then finding your folder, just like you would find any other file, and then hit Choose. For the purpose of this, I'm hitting Cancel. So you always want to check that every time you reopen Final Cut Pro if you are using somebody else's computer, just to make sure that your files aren't going all over the place. Another thing to do to make sure that you're not going to be missing your files or you can't find your files is to always try to work on the same computer, at least for the duration of the project that you're working on. If you switch projects later, maybe you want to switch computers, that's okay. Don't switch in between projects because then you're going to have to move all your files from one computer all the way onto another computer, and it causes you a lot of hassle because you're going to have to find all those files, figure out a way to transfer them. If you don't have like a network or something, then you're going to need an external hard drive, and it's just going to get really complicated. So try to choose a computer that you're comfortable with and continue working on that computer for the duration of the project. You always want to save first. I know that sometimes maybe you're just trying something, you don't necessarily want to save your project right away, or why do I need to save it right away? Like, shouldn't I do something to it first? No, always save it right away, and here's why. Every time you log and capture something, Final Cut Pro always immediately makes a folder in which to put all of your capture scratch, all of your video files that it's making when you log and capture. If you don't save your project first, it's going to create a file folder called something like Untitled Project 1. So if you continuously forget to save your files save your Final Cut Pro files, the project that you're working on, before you log and capture, you're going to end up with a zillion untitled folders. And then you're never going to be able to find any of your files, and it's just going to become a complete mess. So if you just save first every time you come on to work on a new project, it's just going to make your life so much easier in the long run. And that's a similar point is to be very careful about naming everything. When you log and capture, it gives you the option of naming your file. Here, let me bring something up so I can show you guys. Okay, I don't have camera hooked up, so it's not going to show me everything that it normally would. But right here in the description box, that's the place where you want to name your clip. And you want to think about making it a really intelligent name, because if you don't, if you're ever trying to find that file again, it's just going to be a big pain, because you're going to have a zillion files named untitled. And then you're going to have to look at each one and try to figure out which untitled is your untitled. And it's a headache that you really don't need, and it can be really easily avoided by simply typing in a new description that really fits your clip every time. So let's say like we're doing a video of a cat. You know, you might want to do cat take 1. And you want to name every single take separately. So that way you're going to be able to find that file easily. You can't really go back in and rename it afterwards, because then Final Cut's not going to understand exactly where to find it. The way that Final Cut understands file names is it's going to give it a location where the last segment of that location is the actual file name. So it might be something like my Mac slash my documents slash Final Cut Pro slash cat project 1 slash cat take 1, and that's going to be the actual full name of the clip that that the timeline is referencing. If you don't have all of that, all of those folders properly named, or you rename something, Final Cut Pro is not going to know where to find it. So you want to make sure that you're really careful about what you name things before you get everything set up. Now, what happens if you can't find something because it did get a name changed, or it did change locations? Now you have to tell it where to find that file so that way you can play your clips. Well, what'll happen is you'll see a little, it'll probably tell you that your media went offline, and then you'll see that your clip got this little red slash through it as if it's just been logged and not captured. And the way that you relink it is by right-clicking on that clip, or you can do this in File and then hit Reconnect Media. But you can right-click on that specific one if you're just missing one, hit Reconnect Media, and then you're going to select your clip, and then either locate it manually in here and just go through and tell it exactly where to find it, and then hit Choose. That will relink it, and then you can just hit Connect. Or you can try Search. Search doesn't usually help. It's usually hard to find it. And once again, if you have a zillion untitled clips and you're looking for untitled, not only is it going to be hard to find it manually, but Search is really not going to be able to find it because it's going to come up with like 6 different clips that have the same name. It's going to be really difficult. So you want to make sure you name everything correctly, and if you do need to find it, that's how you find it, by hitting Reconnect Media. The other nice thing about knowing how to set your scratch disks is that when you go to look at, like if you're not sure where your folders are, when you go to, you can just pretend like you're setting your scratch disks by opening up the system settings, and that'll tell you where everything is besides that, and you can see where the autosave vault is. So if the program did crash, you can easily find where your autosave vault is if you didn't know, by going into your system settings and just looking at where it gives you right here the file location. So then you can just open up your auto-saved project from there. If you are going to do a really long take of something, like let's say you're going to do like 20 minutes to an hour, don't log and capture that as one single clip, because then you can never keep that transfer that footage onto anything else except an external hard drive. Because the file size will be larger than 4.38 gig, which is the amount that you can fit onto a DVD. So if you know that you're going to log something really big and you want to save that footage afterwards, my advice is to make sure that you capture it into 2 separate clips, or more than that. If you're doing something that's like an hour long, make sure that you don't capture more than, let's say you're doing it in standard definition, not high definition.
So like a football game.
Yeah, like if you're doing a football game, make sure that you don't have more than like 10 to 15 minutes of video in a file all its own. Because if you have more than that, the file's going to be too big to put onto a DVD. So what do you do instead? Well, when you put your endpoint for when you're logging, like let's say like the first endpoint is like 00000100, right, or something. Okay, we're starting at like the first minute, and then like your out point, let's say, is like 15 minutes after that. Okay, 15 minutes and 20 frames, let's say. Okay, let's just pretend that for a second. Okay, so we're capturing like about 15 minutes of footage. The next, just instead of using capture now, I know that that's tempting, but the best thing to do is to log the clip instead at that point, and then I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this, and you might not always do that. Okay, if you're doing something, this is logging your clips is it's ingenious. Okay, you don't have to sit there and be like, yeah, when am I going to stop this? Wow, I have to watch the whole thing. No, you log it all first with using fast forward, just telling it where to start and stop the clip with using the time code. You understand that tapes all have a time code. It's specific. Every frame has a certain number to indicate that it's that frame. You log everything, then you walk away while it's doing it. You go have a sandwich, or you go have a coffee, or you do whatever the heck you want to do, because you can do that. That's the beauty of Final Cut Pro.
We can go into that in detail, because
Yeah.
I've done it once, but for the most part, we capture now, we drag it down, and then we edit from there.
Okay, so let's say we were. I mean, I don't have a camera hooked up to this, so it's going to be. You guys going to have to use your imaginations. What happens is, what you would do is you'd hook the camera up, you'd hit play, right? You watch where you want the clip to come in, right? Like where you want to start a clip. So let's use like the football game for an example. Okay, let's say that we want to just segment just the pregame show. Okay, we want just the pregame show to be its own clip, and we're not going to be concerned about getting the whole thing all at once, right? So first of all, we're going to name things. Okay, we're going to name it pregame show. Okay, now we have a name for it. All right. Now, let's say the pregame show starts at 1 minute into the take, and we know that after we're hooked up to the camera, we hit play on the camera. We're watching it, and we see, oh, the pregame show is about to start. You hit I on your computer. Okay, you're not going to see it on here because, like I said, where I don't have a camera hooked up at the moment, but I is a quick key for something called making an endpoint. And that basically means you're just making a little note to the computer saying, hey, this time code is important.
So it's gonna like when you press I, it's gonna put the numbers in itself.
Yes, exactly. So wherever the camera is at that moment, whatever the time code is at that exact second when you hit I, that's where it's going to save the time code right over here in this little bottom
the other
area.
thing with that is, you know how you log everything,
Nope,
and
you
then
don't
you
need
always
to.
yell about your capture scratch, how you run out of room and blah 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 blah. You could go in and log, and if you log everything, then you're not going to end up burdening your capture scratch files, because you're
that a
only going to
400 or
use
an
what you need
800?
to. It's a 4.
Okay, good,
So
excellent.
I guess it's a different button for when you want to stop.
Right. Well,
So I would be where you want to start.
Those
here,
are
let
these.
me get this kind of going with the camera. Ooh, it quit on me. Speaking of, okay, while this is starting up, it's a good idea to know where the auto save vault is in case that happens to you. It quits, and your project goes bye-bye. You know what I mean? Because it's automatically saving copies for you usually by default every 30 minutes. But as I showed the last class, you can change that time, and I guess you can just tell them at another point or something. I'm not going to bother going into that at the moment since we've got
This is huge, though, guys, because everybody in here does file capture now. And you capture everything, and then you go through everything, where in reality, instead of walking away when you're capturing, if you sit there and just do I's and O's with what you need, then you can leave and do what's called batch capture.
right. Yeah. Is there a tape in there? Okay, excellent. Okay. As you know, or as you should know, you can control the camera through these controls on the computer, and you never really have to touch the camera at all.
It's on camera.
Yeah. Oh, it's even him. I'm like, what is? I was like, what is it?
Okay, it's on there. Okay, and as you can see, up in this